Hello, welcome. Very nice to be here. Welcome to this first session of A Course in Mastering Alchemy in January of 2017. There are a lot of changes that we are in the process of doing with Mastering Alchemy. And so before I actually start talking about what are dimensions and how they work, which is really kind of fascinating because from the beginning when we talked about that, there's been actually a whole lot of changes. But in Mastering Alchemy, we're going to do something, a number of different things. One of the things that I've noticed over the last year or so is there are more and more of you coming to these conversations, these talks that we're doing right here. And many new people are coming, and many of you that have been around for some time, that are participating in Mastering Alchemy, people who have figured out that there's a lot of good information that is being presented in Mastering Alchemy, and they can come and get it in these courses or these sessions that we're doing right here. In that context, which is all really wonderful, but in that context, one of the things that I'm noticing is the nature of the information that's being provided is not out of the reach of new people, but the foundation that allows new people coming into this work is not really well established. You know, years ago we used to talk about the rose and center of your head and grounding and layers of thought, and really kind of created a very fundamental footing for the balance of the work to be understood. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide this session up into two sessions. The quality of the work that we've been providing all along, we're going to continue to provide, and we're going to provide it in something called Mastering Alchemy Light. We're going to be pulling many of the aspects of the course in Mastering Alchemy out and beginning to provide it to you so that you can have a little broader understanding of what Mastering Alchemy is all about, as well as getting some substantive tools and awarenesses. You know, in this aspect we talk about the color codes and the sound templates, and we begin to talk about how to manage your thought and your emotions. But on a fundamental level, we're going to continue to do this lecture, this conversation, but we're going to bring it back to some of the structural footing so that many of the new people can begin to have that relationship to the work and then step into either Mastering Alchemy Light or level 1 or take level 2. So all of that is in the process of unfolding. Because the way this work is also unfolding, primarily because of these three waves of light. You're going to hear me talk a lot about these three waves of light over the next 6 months. But these three waves of light are structuring and restructuring not only how you know yourself, but how you know the world around you. The things you believe are going to begin to be somewhat tested, not in a negative way, but you're going to start to find that you are questioning what you thought was an absolute truth or an absolute foundation. That's really very good, but nonetheless it's going to be uncomfortable for many people who don't have a footing or a structural foundation. So there's going to be about 5 or 6 sessions that I'm going to do really over the next month, and we're going to do them on Facebook. It will probably put them into YouTube, but there'll be 10-minute sessions with me explaining what these waves of light are, how they are affecting you. And for many of you, there's two things that are very significant about you that you don't necessarily put an awareness of. One of those things is you hold a dream, and you've held this dream for really, really long time. This dream is about all the beautiful things you think the world should be, how people should be respectful and have dignity and integrity and laugh and have joy and have certainty and a commanding sense of themselves, and yet that respect for others. You hold that really, really deep. You also hold a memory, and this memory was created in Atlantis. And the memory is a very pronounced fear, very deep, that that dream is going to be taken away from you. And so these three waves of light play into that dream and that fear. And there's an ability to begin to understand in this work that we're playing in Mastering Alchemy how to manifest that dream and how to simply neutralize and eliminate that fear, not only for you, but for everybody else on the planet that holds it. But that's another topic. And so this aspect where we're playing here with what are dimensions and how does time work, next week's session, is part of that footing, that foundation. So I'm really inviting you to kind of step up and play here, because the information is actually new. For the last 2 years, we have somewhat been in a pause. And in that pause, there has not been a lot of new information provided by me, by the Archangelics, by the Lords of Light, very purposely, because there had to be a waiting period for something to happen. These 3 waves of light began in July. They accelerated in the equinox in June, the equinox in June. They stepped up significantly, solstice in June, the equinox in September, but the December solstice opened up a very significant set of changes. We'll talk about those in ways that I think you'll find very fascinating. But for now, let's talk about this dimensions. What are they? And dimensions are very interesting from the standpoint, let me see if I can put them in this context. Let's call each dimension a box. And within each box, there are rules and structures that play very specifically in that box. Each box has overlapping rules and structures, but each box doesn't function the same as the previous box. So let's start with this third dimensional reality that we call reality. It is extremely limiting. It is conditional. There is nothing unconditional in the third dimension. Now right here people jump up and go, wait a minute, I have unconditional love. Well, actually no, you don't. Not in the third dimension. In the fourth dimension, we'll get to in a minute, unconditionality begins to be available. In the fifth dimension, it's very available, but not in the third dimension. You see, the third dimension plays very specifically on a concept that is called linear time. Most people, if you ask them about time, they will tell you very clearly, time is past, present, future, and then you die. And then enlightened beings say, and then you do it all over again. Yeah, they're kind of right. But in that timeline, time is perceived as fixed, permanent. That's all there is. There's no other choice. That's how it works. When in fact, there is significant other choices. Time is an application. It is not a fixed concept. And you'll see what I mean in just a moment. But in third dimension, we believe that past, present, future, and then you die. And I'll talk about that in a second. In third dimension, there's also this aspect of duality. Good, bad, right, wrong, should, shouldn't. That structure of them and us, very prevalent. One of the things that's very challenging about the third dimension right now, and all you have to do is look around, as these new waves of light began to really start to engage more fully. They have very specific purposes, very wonderful purposes. However, 2 of these waves are all about disengaging. The third wave is very gentle. It's about smoothing, calming, nurturing, moving things out of the way without any effort or resistance. But when your belief is past, present, future, then you die, and you are very aware of conditionality, you spend a lot of time in your past based on the conditions, the experiences that came about. Those conditions condition the future. This is what they told me. If I did, then therefore I would be successful. Or you're not okay, you don't deserve, you're not attractive, you don't fit, you're never going to succeed. I don't know why I ever had you. It's kind of harsh. However, have you ever heard those messages? And based on those messages, we perceive our future based on the past messages. And so here's where one of the interesting parts are. You live predominantly in your past and in your future. Now, when you begin to step into present time, I'll talk about in fourth dimension in a moment, you can begin to understand that past-future relationship. But in third dimension, in conditionality, there is a present time moment, and in the third dimensional present time moment, there is reaction. Meaning, oh my God, this wasn't supposed to happen. That law of attraction comes and plays in here also. That law of attraction says, what you put your attention on, I, the universe who absolutely adores you, will not get in the way of your creation, will not second guess what you put your attention on. I will provide you, the universe says. So when you play in third dimension and you have these conditionalities, you're not okay, you're not attractive, you don't fit, I'm not okay, structuring your attention point, the universe, the law of attraction, doesn't distinguish between is this good for you or bad for you, is this right or wrong for you, you sure you really want to do this? It doesn't ask those questions. If you want to wallow in the levels of survival and those kind of words, the universe does not distinguish. It says, gee, Jim woke up this morning, he's still in that victim level, he's really worried about, he can't have very much, he must love this game. I'll give him more of what he has his attention on. So that's past, present reactionary state, future is very much the conditionality of this third dimensional reality. There is no choice in the third dimension. Now I can hear people going, wait a minute, this is getting a little bit extreme. No choice. No choice. In third dimension, you don't choose, you react. But I'll talk about choice in just a second. In that third dimensional space that we play in, there are numbers of aspects of how we perceive. And one of the things that we do in the third dimension is we, in that perception of the past to the future, we begin to have various thoughts. I'm not okay. Now, in simple terms, you've never been not okay. It's impossible to be not okay, but you wear shirts that are really too tight and shoes that don't fit, and they really make you kind of cranky. And that's kind of what happens in third dimension. When you walk around with someone else's opinion of you, you are not okay. They hand it to you. You accept it because they yelled at you, you're not okay. Remember the mom, dad, teacher, minister thing? And then you walk around for the rest of your life trying to figure out, what did I do that makes me not okay? How come I have this context of I'm not okay? What did I do? Mostly, what did I do wrong? So that space, third dimension, you are trying to figure out something that you never did. Somebody else's opinion, having a bad lifetime one moment, said, you're not okay, here's a gift. And you've been trying to figure out what's wrong with you ever since. But see, that's the nature of the conditionality in the structure of the third dimension. There is another element of this third dimension, is this nature of reaction. Many of us in third dimension, look around, are constantly in anticipation, in worry, in defense. But all those words really run into or interpret into fear. And fear, when you begin to step into the fourth dimension, I'll talk about in a second, and you begin to recognize you have choice, and you begin to recognize that what you experience in the third dimension as words like never and always, he's never going to be okay, she's always going to be that. Not a lot of movement in that space, not a lot of opportunity in that space. Fourth dimension, you begin to have an aspect of choice. But see, in choice, you begin to be in present time, and in present time, you get to observe rather than react. And it's in that space where you begin to step into that fourth dimension, many things begin to happen. But in that reaction, I'm not okay, I don't deserve, I have to worry about the future, I'm still hurting from the past. That's how the third dimension has created all of us at one point or another. And when you look around at the world today, that structure is very, very prevalent. That structure, with these three waves of light that are moving in, is in the process of being shattered. Now, shattered is an interesting word. These waves are about disenabling, disconnecting. And what they're really all about is disconnecting that sense of, I'm not okay. There's a problem. I don't deserve. I can't have. There are limitations and restrictions because they told me I wasn't okay. But when you start to step out of that space and you begin to step into another box, fourth dimension. Fourth dimension is changing. It's very interesting. But fourth dimension, we'll talk about three characteristics of the fourth dimension. Whereas conditionality, linear time in third dimension is the nature of the game. In fourth dimension, you begin to step into something that you know very well. You spend a good amount of time in it and out of it, and it is called present time. Now, all these teachers, Eckhart Tolle, and all these people that talk about now, it's really about now. They're exactly right. Everything is about now. So you can't create in the past, and you can't influence the future in the future. You can't change the past in the past. But when you get into present time and you get into right now, that space begins to give you a lot of additional choice. So present time and choice become very available. In fact, they're part of the rules and structures of this fourth dimensional experience. But when you are in present time and something doesn't work correctly, rather than going, oh my God, this isn't good, you can say, oh, this isn't good. How do I deal with this? But in third dimension, it's a reaction, and then it's a knee-jerk, and then it's a kind of flailing around, throwing energy, blaming, being guilty, etc. Now, you're all the advanced people on the planet, so you have seen people like that. You may not have had those experiences. But there's another very interesting word in this fourth dimensional space, and this word is paradox. Funny word, paradox. And what paradox does is it gives you a level of freedom that does not exist in the third dimension. Paradox simply says what was true a moment ago may not be true this moment, and what was false a moment ago may not be false this moment. So where she is always going to be bad and he is never going to change, in this moment when he or she shows up in your porch after 10 years of not seeing them, and they say, once upon a time I did something that caused us to have a wobble. I'm sorry. I now recognize that. I did something inappropriate and I want to come and apologize. In third dimension, the reaction is, no way. Get off my porch. You don't deserve to be in my presence. You're a bad person. You are always going to be a bad person. No room. But in fourth dimension, you could say, I remember you. I'm very clear about the event. And come in, sit, have a cup of tea with me and tell me about your life. See, choice. They're not always necessarily bad. You have an opportunity to rearrange your past. Now, think about that. What if you could get quiet enough and you could look back at some of these events that have structured your current belief system, and you could evaluate them in a way in present time where you realize, gee, what I did in fourth grade that I really embarrassed myself, it was fourth grade. I don't have to hold myself hostage in limitation being afraid of going out and doing X because I'm going to be embarrassed. When you can begin to bring thoughts and emotions, beliefs, reflections of the past into the present moment in fourth dimension, right now with these waves of light, you're going to find in many, many cases, a great many cases, the minute you simply say, is this still true in my reality? There is no discussion. Those experiences begin to evaporate. See, you really don't have time, in a way, to continue to hold these rocks in your backpack. So these waves of light, which we'll talk about again, they're pushing on you. They're beginning to cause different points of reference to come into your awareness that are really all about allowing you to let go of these baggage, these rocks in the backpack. So fourth dimension, present time, now, choice, which actually creates a tremendous amount of freedom. It begins to create a sense of allowing things to happen that you don't have permission or there's too much restriction in third dimension to consider. You don't have choice in third dimension. It's like, no, he's not okay. He's going to always be bad. But there's something else that happens in fourth dimension that adds to this process in a very interesting way. That present time choice paradox creates both, as I said, a freedom and an allowing. And in that freedom and allowing, and in that pause to observe in present time, and then choose a different action, is becoming something very interesting in a space that is not well known yet. One of the things that occurs in the fourth dimension is your sleep space, the astral plane, if you would. Now, unlike the third dimension where things are tangible, they are physical, the door, the window, the tree, the chair you sit in, all matter, hard physical matter. In the fourth dimension, it doesn't exist that way. It's not structured that way. It doesn't play by those rules or those structures. The fourth dimension is a thought realm. It has density. Have you ever been around two people that were just arguing, and let's say you step into the room and it's like, oh no, I don't think I want to be here, excuse me, and you back out even though no words were said. You can feel the thickness of the energy. Thought realm is both thick and thin energy-wise. It's a density. It is a physicalness, but it is not a heavy matter physicalness like third dimension. But the thing about the fourth dimension that is interesting is it's a thought realm. And what that means is it collects thoughts. Now, have you ever asked yourself, where does the thought go that I just thought when I get done thinking that thought? Probably not. But thoughts don't just go poof and go away. They go somewhere. They have density. They are tangible. They go into that thought realm. And many of those thoughts, when acted upon, they go from a thought into an action, third dimension. I'm thinking I want to go to the store. I now am going to the store. So a thought, an action. But many of the thoughts that are in the fourth dimension are the thoughts that you think all day that you never act on. And there's a scaling to those thoughts. Have you ever been really angry in life? And you sit there and you really get stuck in that third dimensional space. And I hate them. I wish they were dead. They're really terrible. I'm going to get even. How do those thoughts feel? And where do those thoughts go when all of a sudden that person shows up on your porch and says, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I apologize. How many times do you go, okay, well, you really are my best friend, and all right, I'll let it go this time. But where did the thoughts go? All that anger and resentment. It went into the fourth dimensional thought realm. And so those heavy, restricted thoughts, something happens in that space. They are very magnetic. they connect to all the other thoughts that thought like that. Now, one of the other things about this astral thought realm that plays out that's not conscious to most people is those heavy thoughts become the emotional body of the consciousness of the earth. And so many of you are finding yourself in new dream spaces at night. You are finding yourself fighting battles. You are finding yourself in dreams that aren't your dreams. You're finding yourself in bad dreams and good dreams. But many of those dreams that you are finding yourself in, one, don't belong to you, and two, kind of the higher dimensional aspect of you is very active in your sleep space. The part of you that I'm talking to doesn't remember your sleep very well. However, you are about to. In that space, you are going to be given the opportunity to begin to dismantle many of those thoughts that you have thought that were never acted on. Now, the vast majority of these thoughts are really interesting because they were never your thoughts in the first place. Let me add a little caveat. Walking around in your day, most of the thoughts you think and most of the beliefs you hold are not yours. The mom, dad, teacher, minister said, this is the truth. You should hang out with those people and not these people. This is good, that's bad. You go here, you go there. We don't eat this kind of food, we eat those kind of foods. And so you went, okay. And you created a lot of belief. Never was your belief. In fact, you put yourself in situations where, if you recall, people said, this is what you have to do. And you didn't want to do that. You didn't feel good about that. Didn't align with you. Something was not right about this. And yet, well, I'm supposed to. It's my job. It's my mom, dad, teacher, minister. And so in those actions, there's a lot of resistance and hesitation. There's also a lot of limitation to who you are. In your reality, you know a place in the heart that is that internal guidance system. Now think about it. There's been times where somebody say, let's go do this, and you kind of very clearly went, this isn't a good idea. Internal guidance system. There are times when you said, this isn't a good idea, but okay, I'll do it because you said so, and 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes later, it's like, that was not a good idea. There are times also where there was others who said to you, you can't do this, you don't deserve, you'll never succeed, and something inside said, that's not who I am. I can do this, I can follow this internal guidance system. In this fourth dimensional space, all of those shoulds and shouldn'ts, can'ts, don'ts, you don't deserve, you're not okay, what's wrong with you, were never yours. As these three waves of energy begin to come, and you begin to take a look at those rather than resist those, you're going to find they were never mine. And they're going to dissipate, and they're going to go away, and there's a freedom that you're going to begin to experience in these next couple of years that is different than anything you've experienced before. That smooth wave is going to just neutralize and move those out of your space. But if you're intending to stay in that third dimension, if you are still arguing for, if you are worrying about the lousy salary that you have and the job that you hate, and you choose to stay there, you're going to be unhappy because these waves of light are going to say, Jim, you don't like this job. You are better than this. Follow your own truth. And you'll quit that job, and the next day there'll be one that pays twice as much and is much closer to what you want. But it's a decision, it's a choice that's made in the fourth dimension that allows you to step out of the third dimension. But the other thing that's happening in this astral space that is very fascinating, and right now it's beginning to be made available to those who are beginning to be very clear about choice and who I am and who I want to know myself as, you're going to find, as many of you who played in Mastering Alchemy listening to this and stepped into that living light body, and you've been in pause for a period of time, you're going to find you're going to begin to remember your sleep space. You're going to begin to find, as many of you are, that you command your presence in that sleep space. And you're going to begin to realize that you can change the dynamics of the sleep space. You can change the dynamics of the timelines. And you can change the dynamics in that sleep space to affect your physical creation. Now that's huge. Is it going to just be a gift? Well, it is a gift, but are you going to just take it and step into it? No, it requires some mastery, it requires some presence, it requires attention and focus, it requires a sense of enjoyment, it requires a sense of curiosity. Interesting, all those words. It requires a sense of certainty and commanding a presence and a sense of graciousness. The odd part of that is now you're beginning to experience the fifth dimension. See, fifth dimension is actually fascinatingly complex and simple all at the same time. It's like watching beauty appear in front of you with all its tremendous complexities, or watching a rainbow and the simplicity, and yet how does that happen? The physics of a rainbow is astonishing. But right here, as you begin to step away from I'm not okay, I don't deserve, and begin to experience choice, and then start to allow your freedom, you're going to begin to find in this fifth dimensional space, really the key word is well-being. Well-being, meaning I like me, I'm pleased with myself. You know, we've been doing that for years in this call, in this session right here. I'm pleased with myself. I like me. Happy. Really simple words. But what happens to you when instead of thinking happy or certain or pleased, you choose to drop down into the heart and feel happy, pleased? See, as soon as you begin to put your attention on this internal guidance system, you do it in present time, you do it right now, and in that right now, joy of choosing a set of vibrations of light that represent themselves in sound, like pleased with myself, and you begin to enjoy it. You begin to let go of, I have a job, I'm late for work, I'm really worried. That falls away as you allow that to fall away, and you begin to simply say, I like me. Something is beginning to happen in the fifth dimension. It's beginning to be very dynamic. It's beginning to be very vibrant. These new waves of light are coming into that space to feel the joy of the dream that you hold from long ago. And so there's this very interesting dynamic and opportunity to begin to step away from that third dimensional reality. You're actually being pushed out of it. If you resist it, argue with it, push against it, you're not going to be really happy camper. Particularly for those of you who are on a call like this. See, most of the people walking around on the street are unconscious of being unconscious. You are beginning to experience something that will sound very funny. You are beginning to become conscious of being unconscious. Now, what that means is you're starting to have this experience that lots of things are coming up in your awareness, and when you don't have a perspective on them, they become fearful or they become a problem. Something's wrong. What's going on with me? I'm having these experiences. You're holding on to them, you're resisting them, you're pushing against them. But the whole purpose of Mastering Alchemy, as it was created by us as we really took a look at what is a pathway that allows humans to move through all of this simple transition and do it with a smile. Have them begin to like themselves. Have them begin to become conscious of that unconsciousness, to let it go, but conscious of being conscious, which leads to being aware of being aware. And so this journey is unfolding. It's going to be quite remarkable. But if I was to put your attention in some tangible way into the effects of this wave dismantling, without being political in any way of this, look back at the fall of 2016. Look at those political campaigns around the world, particularly in the United States. Look at how things that were truths were just shattered. The ability of all kinds of new presentations to be brought forth and hold presence, even though they were disrespectful, they held lies, they were disingenuous, they put down others. For all of you watching those kind of transitions, I'm going to suspect it was rather painful. But the ability to alter that, the ability to step aside from that, all of that's going to keep going on for a grouping of those that are resisting and holding on to the third dimensional box. But for all of you, you can't stay there very long. It's too painful to stay there. It's going to get more painful. Well, not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just you are waking up. You are beginning to know yourself. And in that process, you can't hold your finger in that light socket anymore. You can't allow disrespect and unkind acts that are done one to another. You're beginning to remember. And not only are you remembering, you are beginning to have the capacity to not only change yourself, but to dismantle that whole structure that in many cases is a repeat of an aspect of Atlantis. We haven't talked about this, Atlantis. It's always been on the question of many people. But in Atlantis, that third dimension was all there was. You created the dream. You created the possibilities. But it wasn't put in place when Atlantis fell. The fear that many of you have right now is the remembrance of not being able to manifest the dream. And this time, that fear of it being taken away from you is very real in the feeling body. Now keep it simple, but it is unnecessary for two reasons. One, it will not happen again. That's a bigger story. And two, in this awareness of stepping out of that game of third dimension, resistance, fear, competition, advantage, aggression, those kind of words, you're going to find that much of the trappings of that fear are going to fall away fairly quickly. Now, this fourth, fifth, sixth dimension that I'm talking about, I'm just touching on it. I'm just giving you reference points to it. But what I'm telling you is a roadmap. And as you begin to recognize now, you begin to recognize ease and happy and I like me. I'm pleased with myself for no reason. I didn't do anything. I'm just going to sit down, take a number of breaths. I'm going to be happy for no reason. I'm going to be pleased with myself for no reason. I might even venture into liking myself. Now, kind of advanced technique, but I like myself. And then just stay there for a moment. The real kind of magic in this, if there was anything called magic, is by holding your attention inside that heart space, that internal guidance system, holding your attention there just for a moment. Everything unlike that space in you is going to begin to dissipate because it's impossible for you to be not okay. impossible. You have never been not okay. Not only that, you've never done it wrong. However, they told me I did. They didn't like it. I got an F on my test. They didn't get the job. Yeah, kind of good for you. It was, I didn't step into that conditioning or that structure. You've never done anything wrong. Here, you begin to like yourself. You start to realize the range of choices you have. And they are choices within beauty and dignity and respect and appreciation and gratitude. And I not only like me, I like you. You're going to see this evolve over the next couple of years. On one hand, it will not be a comfortable evolution for many, but on the other hand, for those who wish to know more of themselves, this is the smoothest transition that has been available in the totality of the fall of consciousness. So I'm losing track of my time, but I'm going to come to a stopping point right there. There is much more in this third, fourth, and fifth dimensional space. In this bodywork that was designed for transitioning through these changes, beginning to know yourself, this course in Mastering Alchemy, learning how to manage your space. This is me, and that over there is the theater to entertain me. The ability to get grounded, the ability to find the center of your head, the ability to observe something without going to it, throwing energy at it, arguing with it, becoming consumed by it. Those are constructs of awareness that aren't really taught in the third dimension. They're not hard, they're not challenging, they're different. And when you begin to put together these pieces of being grounded, center of your head, defining your rows, playing in the different levels of thought, beginning to find the feeling of well-being versus the intellectual, rational mind concept of well-being, you're going to find you have choice. And right now that choice is looser and more prevalent than it's really ever been before. So over the next coming months, we're going to talk about these three waves of light. We're going to talk next week about time. And so pretty much I've just kind of set up this linear timepiece in this present timepiece. But there's something in that fifth dimensional space called circular time. There's something called simultaneous time. In that space, as you begin to evolve yourself, the capacity to know yourself in realms and dimensions, very real. But you've never stopped to be quiet enough in the now moment to allow this all to come to you. With a little bit of skill and a little bit of information and a big sandbox to play in, you're being invited to try on a new suit of clothes. And in that new suit of clothes, there's a lot of fun places. Oh, you get to trip and fall on your nose, which is really much more like, you remember when you were a kid and you used to build the blocks and you'd put one more on and, oh, it's going to fall, I know it's going to fall. And everybody laughs and you put one more on, it's going to go. And you put one more on and there it goes and everybody laughs. And then you pick up the blocks and you build the little tower again. There's a lot of amusement. There is no failing. There's no failing. There's a lot of joy. There is no fear. There's a lot of opportunity. And in the fifth dimensional space, there's nothing unsafe and there's nothing to distrust, because those words don't exist in that vibration. Now just pause and think about that. And as you begin to think about that, you will recall the dream that you thought a long time ago.